Oh, the biggest week of the high school football season to date begins with another episode of Inside the Zone alongside the News Sentinel's Justin Kenny. I'm Wayne TV's Joe Whalen, filling in for Glenn Marini this week. Thanks so much for logging on to Wayne.com for this week's episode. It's one and done time, gut check time, whatever phrase you want to use. The march to Lucas Oil Stadium begins this Friday when 5 out of the 6 classes begin sectional play. You ready to break this down?
Let's do it. Let's go.
Let's start with the big boys. 2 games jump out. Northrop at Homestead, Carroll at Warsaw. Let's start with the first matchup. I think most people expect the Spartans to take down the Bruins on this one. Homestead's offense is just going to be too much for that Northrop D.
Yeah, Northrop has really struggled to put points on the board against quality opponents, and Homestead's definitely a quality opponent. So I think, everybody's kind of anticipating that Carroll-Homestead matchup. I think on the Homestead side, they should have no problem reaching that final.
Absolutely. Carroll, on the other hand, not going to be quite a cakewalk. We were just talking about this off-air a moment ago. This could be the game of the week for a lot of media outlets. Carroll, unbeaten despite the quarterback controversy, despite losing arguably the area's best player in Justin Tranquil, 9-0 after the regular season. Warsaw, 5-4, but it's a road trip. The Tigers are tough at home.
Yeah, Warsaw has been beat some impressive teams this year. They knocked off Concord when they were number 1. They beat East Noble. They beat Northridge, who's a tough team ranked in 4A that plays Dwenger this week. So Warsaw has some quality wins. Especially at home, like you mentioned, they can play, and it's going to be a tough road trip for Carroll. I think that's a kind of maybe a trap game, you could say, but definitely a game that Carroll has to be ready for.
For what it's worth, 2 similar opponents, both played Columbia City, both played East Noble, both beat those 2 teams. When you look at Carroll, I think if nothing else, we can say this is a very battle-tested team coming in. They've seen pretty much everything, haven't they? Yeah,
I think you could take 2 avenues with Carroll. You're going to say, okay, they pulled out so many close games, it's got to start evening out at some point. Or you can look at it and say, they're so tough mentally and physically down the stretch. They're just very tough to put away, very tough to beat. So, which angle does it go to? Do they continue to win close games in the playoffs, or does kind of these close games kind of catch up to them?
At this point, it might be beating a dead horse talking about the quarterback situation at Carroll. But do you think now the fact that it seems like Aiden Smith is the entrenched quarterback, how much does that help, especially when you're moving into the postseason?
Definitely some familiarity and continuity at the quarterback position was huge once Carroll settled on Aiden Smith, and I think that really settled down the offense. Really allowed all the other 10 guys in the huddle to really look toward one guy and focus on one guy and listen to one guy instead of rotating quarterbacks, every series. So I think they got continuity now offensively. That defense has been strong all year. So, they're firing on all cylinders right now on both sides of the ball.
Well, the postseason has had a lot of good results for Carroll as of late. Couple of sectional championships in recent history for the Chargers. Another team that has had a lot of success recently in the postseason in 4A, Bishop Dwenger. A lot of people maybe wrote them off last season. They make it all the way down to Lucas Oil Stadium. This year, there's already talk that with an opening round sectional matchup at Northridge, the Saints season could come to an end in the opening round of the playoffs.
Yeah, we've kind of just been piling on Dwenger, haven't we, in the last month or so? They lost 5 straight, the biggest losing streak for them since 2000. And they got a really tough game, like we mentioned, at Northridge. Northridge has only given up 7 points in the last 4 weeks. They beat Concord. And they've beaten Goshen and Elkhart Memorial as well, and those are kind of struggling teams. Then they shut both of those out, so not totally unexpected. But this is a team that's been pretty stingy defensively lately, Northridge has, and Dwenger's had problems putting up points in recent weeks. So it's a bad matchup on paper for Dwenger. Plus going on the road, a decent bus ride to Northridge as well. So you're definitely looking at a situation where the Saints are in big trouble maybe Friday night.
Well, they started so impressive. 4-0 out of the gate. Their first 2 games put up 90 points. Since then, in that 5-game losing streak, Dwenger being outscored by an average of 32-12. You mentioned the offensive issues. Is this a case of tougher competition and maybe the offense wasn't quite as good as we thought?
It is. I think, talking to Coach Schwarzkopf, and he said definitely the quality of competition has been high for us in the last 4 or 5 weeks. But at the same time, it's a very difficult sectional with quality opponents. And it's going to continue to be very tough for Dwenger. So if they're not being able to put consistent points on the board this last month with such a deep sectional, you kind of wonder and look at it, can they win 3 games against 3 quality opponents with an offense that really kind of struggles to put up points against good teams, because there's a lot of good teams in that sectional.
At the same time, can never completely rule out the Saints. They are what Michigan State is to March Madness.
That's
they
right.
always
They
seem to
rise
overachieve.
To the occasion. Yep.
Another really good matchup in 4A. Leo 7-2, another ACAC championship on the road at 6-3 Wawasee, who has won its last 3 games against 5A and 6A opponents. So both teams coming and playing good football right now. What do you like in this matchup?
I like Leo, but Wawasee is going to be a tough matchup. They're a little like Warsaw, where they've got some impressive wins. Clayton Cook, a wide receiver, going to Ball State, a really impressive player on the outside for them. Leo has kind of snuck under the radar for the most of the year for us because they dominate the ACAC. We're kind of used to it. Okay, home another year for Leo and another championship in the ACAC. Their 2 losses to Norwell by a point week 1 and to Lures by a point. So the 2 losses by 2 points. Other than Columbus, Hartley, and Snyder, really the only team to really give Lures a game. So really interesting to see Leo going forward, and they got a tough test at Wawasee.
And I think that Lures game in particular really demonstrates what Leo does so well, which is control the pace of the game. We're used to seeing Lures throw up 40, 50, 60 points, and Leo was able to completely slow down the game. And when you can do that come the postseason, how crucial is that?
Oh, definitely, because when you can control the line of scrimmage, control the ball, control time of possession, and control the tempo of the game, I mean, that's everything. And Jared Souter, and arguably his best coaching year to date this year because they lost so much to graduation, a really young team, especially offensively. Did the switch at quarterback, Jordan Hissong was there, and then Clay Koppenstein. So it's been really interesting to see those guys and kind of develop throughout the year because we're used to Leo just pounding everybody by 40, 50, 60 points. It's a different Leo team. Yet there they sit, 7-2, entering the postseason.
Well, the Lions' final season in the ACAC ended with a perfect 7-0 romp through the regular season. They're hoping to do the same in sectional play. A couple other games we want to get to real quick in 4A. DeKalb 3-6, visiting East Noble 6-3. I don't care what your record was during the regular season. It's always tough to go up to Kendallville and play.
Yeah, definitely. East Noble kind of had that stumble last week against Belmont that nobody saw coming, although, Belmont's a quality team. DeKalb, we talked a lot about them in the opening part of the year. They've lost 6 of 7 entering the postseason, but they're still a dangerous team. I think teams have really identified what they do well and have taken it away, and DeKalb has had trouble kind of finding other avenues to move the ball and to score, so that's kind of slowed them down. But East Noble definitely kind of looking to get back on the right track. Definitely don't want a loss in Week 9 in a game you should win entering the postseason.
New Haven starts on the road with Logansport. Bulldogs on to the next round?
Yeah, that NCC, it's so tough to judge the competition there just because it's got a lot of bad football programs in it. Let's say it. I can't say it nicely. That's McCutcheon sits there 9-0 and they're ranked in 5A, but it's just so tough to know how good they are because of the quality of competition they play. But it's a bad road trip to go to Logansport from New Haven, but it's definitely a game the Bulldogs win.
Better road trip coming back after the win.
Yes, definitely.